I just spent my last bit of courage on a pile of broken PC parts. $100 worth of stuff that might be completely useless. And the challenge is simple. Can I turn all of this into a fully working PC? I already know the answer, and I'm going to need about 15 minutes to explain how I got there. With PC part prices constantly going up, first RAM, now storage, building a gaming PC has never been harder. And yeah, this method isn't new. Buying broken parts is basically a gamble. But if you're smart and a little lucky, it can actually pay off. Today, I didn't just bring one or two parts. I brought a lot. Let's get into it. Lately, I've been spending more time on eBay than in my own bed. And that's how I found these parts. So cheap they were practically below used pricing. Every listing said untested, but let's be real. Most of the time that just means I tried to fix it and gave up. Truly untested hardware is rare, so I wasn't expecting miracles. Just rolling the dice with a bit of hardware knowledge and a lot of hope. And one more thing I didn't mention earlier. All of these parts came from a single seller. Buying from multiple sellers would have destroyed the budget with shipping alone. Now it's time to see if any of this stuff actually works. I'm going to test each part one by one. To save time and make troubleshooting easier, I'll use known good parts to check the ones that might be dead. Let's start with the motherboard. First up is a server board, the X99TFQ. At first glance, nothing looks obviously wrong. Well, except the CMOS battery is missing, and the I/O shield is loose. One nice thing about this board is that it has onboard debug LED, which should make life easier if something's wrong. So, step 1, I drop in a fresh CMOS battery to give it the best possible chance. I hit the power button, and right away the debug LED stops at FF. Checking the error code table that usually points to a CPU issue, or possibly a BIOS problem. Most of the time, this happens when the CPU isn't getting power, so I double-check all the power connections, reseat the CPU, move the RAM around, and make sure everything is installed correctly. After rechecking, nothing looks out of place. The CPU does warm up, so it's clearly getting power. But here's the red flag. The chipset stays completely cold. At that point, it's clear this isn't a simple fix. This board likely has a deeper issue that basic troubleshooting won't solve. So I'm calling it here and moving on to the second motherboard, the X99T8, to see if my luck improves. Alright, let's power it on and see what happens. Oh no! Error B0. That usually means the motherboard isn't detecting the RAM? Classic. So I grab some general purpose contact cleaner and clean out the RAM slots, then try again. And I can't believe it. It posts. We've got display. At that moment, I was way more excited than I probably should have been, but hey, when a dead board comes back to life, it hits different. This is actually a super common issue, and the fix turned out to be simple but effective. To be safe, I plug in a hard drive and boot it like a normal system, just to make sure nothing sketchy is hiding under the surface. And yep, it boots straight into Windows. A quick check in CPU-Z confirms it. This is indeed the X99T8. Honestly, this feels like a straight-up win. A legit motherboard rescued from the dead pile? Alright, I'll set this one aside for now and move on to the next board, an H81. I'm going to test this one a bit faster because there are still a lot of parts left to go through. Unfortunately, this one gives me nothing. No fan spin, no signs of life, no response at all. This one's a dead end, and sometimes that's just how it goes. Alright, moving on to the next motherboard, the H110. At first glance, it's not pretty. The metal parts are heavily rusted, and when I open the socket, yeah, a few pins are bent. Before even thinking about powering it on, I carefully nudge those pins back into place and get everything as close to ideal conditions as possible. Moment of truth, power on. On the first boot, the board powers up but keeps cutting in and out. Not a great sign. I swap the RAM to a different slot. Same result. At this point, I'm thinking, yeah, this one's probably done. But then I try a different RAM stick. And no way. It posts. We've got display. Turns out this board is just extremely picky about RAM. I boot into Windows, check CPU-Z, and sure enough, it's a legit H110 motherboard. So yeah, luck strikes again. That makes 2 working boards out of 4 so far, and honestly, I'll take that win. Alright, moving on to CPU testing. I've got 4 CPU here, so to save time, I clean all the contact surfaces first before testing anything. First up, Xeon E5, 2686V4. I power it on, the CPU fan spins. But that's it. No display, no keyboard lights, no signs of life. Dead. I move on. Next is the Xeon E5 2680 V4. Same story. Fan spins, nothing else happens. At this point, it's pretty clear both Xeons are done. CPU repair isn't really realistic anyway. When a CPU dies, it usually dies internally, and the success rate is basically zero. So I switch to the third CPU, Core i3 4130. This time I get 3 beeps from the speaker. That usually points to RAM or CPU issues. I reseat the RAM, try different slots. No luck, still won't boot. Last CPU, a Xeon E3, same socket as the H110 board I just revived. I drop it in, hit power, fan spin for a second, then shut off instantly. Weird behavior. After digging a bit deeper, I realize what's going on. This Xeon can work on this board, but only with a BIOS mod. Stock BIOS won't recognize it. I throw in a supported CPU, flash a modded BIOS, fast forwarding that part because it's not the main focus here, and then reinstall the Xeon. Moment of truth. Power on, and boom, it boots immediately. CPU-Z confirms it. Xeon E3 1220V6, fully recognized. So yeah, at this point, I've got a working motherboard and a working CPU. Next up, RAM testing. Alright, now let's move on to the RAM. I've got 3 sticks here. 2 of them are 4GB DDR3, and I'll test them one by one. Before testing, I clean the contact pins on each stick. Always worth doing with old RAM. First stick goes in, and thank God, it works. We've got a display. That's one good stick. Second DDR3 stick. Yeah, no signal, no boot, no image. I try reseating it, different slots, multiple attempts, but nothing. Guess my luck only lasts so long. So now we move on to the third stick. This one is completely unbranded. No label, no specs, nothing. But just by looking at the notch, I can tell it's DDR4. I drop it straight into the H110 board I just revived and hit power. Let's see if this mystery RAM wants to cooperate. Oh man, I can't believe it. This mystery RAM actually works. That's a legit win, like a random blessing from the PC gods. And honestly, that matters a lot because good RAM is the difference between a pile of parts and an actual working PC. Next thing I need is storage. I've got 4 Samsung drives here, so I fire up Crystal Disk Info to check their health. Drive 1, 1% health. That's not kinda worn, that's call your family, it's time. Instant e-waste. Drive 2, please be better. Nope, also 1%. Back-to-back heartbreak. Alright, drive 3, come on. Okay, we finally got something. 29% health, and it already has Windows on it. Not ideal, but at this point, I'm not being picky. I just need a drive that doesn't sound like it's about to explode. I boot into Windows and use it normally, and surprisingly, it feels fine. No weird freezes, no instant crashes. So I'm gonna set this one aside as the usable for now drive. Then I try the last drive, hoping for a miracle. And yeah, 1% health again. So out of 4 drives, 3 are basically dead, and 1 is the only survivor, barely, but still breathing. But then I noticed something interesting hiding in the pile. There was a Plextor NVMe PCIe X4 card. That looked almost new, still in its plastic sleeve, so I thought I'd scored big. Then I noticed the void sticker was missing. Bad sign. I plugged it in. Nothing. Opened it up and yeah, the NVMe drive was gone. It was just an empty adapter, not even mad at that point. Out of curiosity, I dropped in a known good NVMe drive from my own stash, and the adapter worked perfectly. So while it didn't help this build, it's still useful for older boards without an M2 slot. Not a total loss. Alright, next up is the power supplies. I've got 2 of them here. One rated at 650 watts and another at 565 watts. Neither of these are from big name brands, so yeah, trust level is basically 0. Before anything else, I'm doing the classic paperclip test. Shorting pins 4 and 5 to see if they even turn on. And yes, the first PSU's fan spins up. That's a good sign. But let's be real, that only means it's alive, not that it's healthy. So I move on to the second one. And honestly, I'm kind of shocked. It powers on too. Both fans spinning, no sparks, no smoke. That alone already feels like a small win. But this is just the warm-up. What I really want to know is whether these things can stay stable under load. And that brings us to the part I've been waiting for the most, testing the graphics cards. Just like with the other parts, I start by thoroughly cleaning the PCIe contacts and all the display ports. If a GPU has any chance of coming back to life, this is how you give it the best possible conditions. I begin with the smallest one first, a GT730, 2GB, DDR3. There's honestly not much to say about this card, so let's just see if it even works. On power up, the fan spins, but there's no display output. I try both video ports. Same result, no signal. Alright, moving on. Next up, GTX 1050 Ti 4GB. Okay, this is where I actually start to care. I slot it in, hit the power button, and nothing. Complete silence. But then something much worse happens. I smell it. That unmistakable burnt electronics smell. If you could smell through YouTube, trust me, you'd be just as uncomfortable right now. I pull the card out immediately and take a closer look inside. Yeah, this one's done. Some components clearly blew before it even reached me. Honestly, I'm just glad it didn't happen on my test bench. This card is beyond saving. So now, on to the next contender, GTX 974GB. This is still a genuinely capable GPU even today. Plenty of games can run on it just fine. But of course, none of that matters if it doesn't work. I plug it in. Fans spin, LEDs light up. My hope goes up for about 2 seconds. And then reality hits. No display output. I try every port, display port, DVI, nothing. Completely dead to the outside world. At this point, it's becoming painfully clear. This pile of broken GPU is doing exactly what it promised. Breaking my optimism one card at a time. The last GPU is also a GTX 970, so I won't go too deep into specs again. Alright, let's plug it in and pray this is finally the card that saves the build. No signal. At this point, I'm honestly not even surprised. But wait, I try one last thing. Mini display port, and oh man, I can't believe my eyes, it boots. We've got display. Turns out the card isn't dead after all, it's just the DVI port that's broken. That's it. And with that, I finally have a proper working GPU. So now I've got most of the critical components needed to put together a complete PC. As for the missing parts, luck strikes again. I find a 4 heat pipe air cooler in the pile. It still works perfectly fine, but it's missing the original mounting brackets and retention frame. I'll have to improvise with what I already have lying around. It's not pretty, it's not ideal, and yeah, it's definitely not factory correct. But hey, this whole build stopped being proper a long time ago. And the last component. If you've been paying close attention, you might have noticed I haven't mentioned the case at all until now. That's intentional. Cases are one of the few PC parts that almost never actually break. So I knew from the start this would be the final piece of the puzzle. My plan was simple. First, figure out which components are still alive. Then worry about where to put them. So once I confirmed I had enough working parts to build a system, I went ahead and picked up a case on eBay for $15. Alright, I'm not going to overthink the assembly. Let's just put it together and see what happens. And finally, this is the end result. It's not pretty. Airflow is basically a suggestion, but that was never the goal. The real question is, does it work? Hit the power button. And oh my god, it boots on the first try. No drama. I jump into CPU-Z to double-check everything. Xeon E3, 1220V6, H110, D3A motherboard, 8GB of RAM. So far, so good. Next step, a real stress test. I fire up Heaven Benchmark. And that's when things go sideways. The system suddenly shuts off, completely dead. No reboot, no warning. At this point, the power supply is looking real suspicious. So I swap in a second PSU. One problem though, this PSU only has a single 8-pin GPU cable, while the card needs more power. So yeah, SATA to 6-pin adapter time? Not ideal, but desperate times. Now comes the moment of truth. Power on. Oh my god, it posts. I rerun Heaven Benchmark, and I'm just staring at the screen waiting for it to crash. But it doesn't. No shutdowns, no weird artifacts, no red flags. It finishes the benchmark like nothing ever happened. Against all odds, it actually works. To make the test more complete, I decided to benchmark a few real games. I tried around 5 or 6 different titles, and surprisingly, everything ran just fine. At this point, I can confidently say this challenge was a full success. Thanks a lot for watching till the end. And if you've got any ideas or crazy challenges in mind, drop them in the comments below.